Hello everyone, it's Father Hayes, and we are continuing our series of videos on the Mass. So we've been working our way recently through the Liturgy of the Word, and now we're going to start talking about the Creed. So the Creed, the first thing we want to talk about is, why do we have a creed? What is the purpose of a creed? So St. Cyril of Jerusalem, who lived in the 300s, wrote this about the creed. He says, "In learning and professing the faith, you must accept and retain only the Church's present tradition, confirmed as it is by the Scriptures. Although not everyone is able to read the Scriptures, some because they have never learned to read, others because their daily activities keep them from the study of the Bible, still, so that their souls will not be lost through ignorance, we have gathered together the whole of the faith in a few concise articles." Then he goes on to say, "This summary of the faith was not composed at man's whim. The most important sections were chosen from the whole Scripture to constitute and complete a comprehensive statement of faith." So we get that from St. Cyril of Jerusalem, who is writing again in the 300s. So what are some of the key takeaways that we can get from that? Well, the first is that the Creed, its purpose is to be a complete and comprehensive summary of our Christian faith. The Creed is intended for everyone. It's supposed to be accessible to everyone. So people who were not able to study because they couldn't read or didn't have the time, they wanted to have an instrument that could help them really know the faith and kind of focus in on those key points. So the Creed is intentionally presented in a simplified form as a few concise articles that are easy to memorize. And each article can be unpacked in more detail. So one of the things to do is take this statement by St. Cyril and then compare it with the first section of the Catechism. The first part one of the Catechism is the Creed. So there, all the different points of the Creed are being unpacked in great detail. So what we have that we recite, either if you're saying the Apostles' Creed before the part of the Rosary, or when we say the Creed at Mass, that's the simplified form, but it still contains everything that has been expanded in the Catechism. The other thing, though, I want to point out, and this I thought was very intriguing, is that in St. Cyril's statement, we also have an example of divine revelation. And what I mean by that is the document on divine revelation from the Second Vatican Council spoke of divine revelation as three equal and important components. So think of it as like a three-legged stool. So tradition, what has been orally handed on from person to person, generation to generation, that has originally been revealed by God and then passed on. That's tradition. Some of that has been written down, and that's what we call Scripture. But then you have to have an authority that is going to interpret that, which is the magisterium. So when we go back to his statement, he says that you must accept and retain only the Church's present tradition. All right, so we have tradition there, confirmed as it is by the Scriptures, bringing in the Scriptures. And then we have gathered together the whole of the faith in a few concise articles. This summary of the faith was not composed at man's whim. The most important sections were chosen. Well, who was the one doing the choosing? Those in the magisterium, those who have the teaching authority of the Church. So even when we focus on the Creed, one of the things we're also seeing playing out is divine revelation. Right? God is handing on this revelation ultimately of himself to us, and also a revelation of who we are and who we are intended to be. And it has been passed on to us generation to generation through oral tradition, has been written down and discerned in the Scriptures, and then finally there is the teaching authority of the Church to help us focus on those few concise articles of faith, to present it to us so that we can memorize it and be able to keep it close to us, and then in a broader form, which we see in the Catechism, to unpack it, because the faith, which is again God's revelation of himself, is as infinite as God is himself. So that is an introduction to the Creed. We'll continue to talk about this in some future videos. Look forward to seeing you again soon. God bless.